Epic. I always wanted to say that after watching that. Hello, guys, and welcome to Small Screen Live. I hope you guys are doing very, very well. We've got lots of stuff to talk about on today's show. We've got Shaun with us. We've got James with us. The whole gang is here, all ready to talk about everything pop culture related, mainly comic book stuff. But we'll also talk maybe a little bit about Star Wars today as well, because we're just chatting about it behind the scenes. Before I get into the show, for all you viewers watching on the main Small Screen channel, because we are actually streaming this on 2 YouTube channels, which I didn't know you could do. But if you could also go on to Small Screen Live, which is where these shows will be streamed for the foreseeable future. Subscribe there, and that's where a lot of the chat's happening as well. So if you're watching on the main channel and you want to join in with the chat, go on over to Small Screen Live. And hi, everyone else watching on Facebook and Twitch. And I hope you guys are all doing very well. I think James likes to bring up the comments, doesn't he, beforehand? So bring up some comments, James. Yes, so it's at Small Screen Live on YouTube. So go on and check out at Small Screen Live. Like and subscribe over there. And if you haven't liked and subscribed here, do that as well. Please, 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 please. Right, who do we have in the chat? We have, yes, this bloody comment from the Small Screen that always comes up. What did you guys think of the Book of Boba Fett episode 3? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. I honestly do not understand why that keeps on coming up on Facebook for some reason, and I cannot get rid of it. It's really annoying. I don't know. It's a glitch. It's a glitch in the system. It's a glitch in the Matrix. It's never going to go away. And Marvel Truth says, yo all. Hello to Marvel Truth. I hope you're doing very well. Who else do we have? We have Shaun's Soundtracks in the chat saying hi. Hello, Shaun. I hope you're doing well. It's nice to see you in the comments. We've got Jedi Master EJ saying hello there. You're back. How are you doing, Jedi Master EJ? It's nice to have you in the chat. We've got Bobby Anderson saying, I hope your day is going beautifully. I hope yours is too, Bobby. Nice to see you in the chat. And back on Animal Crossing in a big way. So I need to go to your island. I know I say that every week, but I'm hard at work on my own island at the moment, just to get it ready for your visit. The First Ranger Battalion says, also, let's go. Small screen, more like late screen. Am I right? I kid. I love you. Let's do this. Yeah, we were a bit late today. We try to get it in on time, but doesn't always
my
happen.
fault.
It's always James's fault. It wasn't James's fault. Right, who else? You can't use that anymore. It's not Valentine's Day, James, so you can't use that anymore. I'm gonna like get rid of that clip. It's the last thing I do. Right, who else do we have in the chat? Is that everybody? Have I said hello to everybody? Shaun's Soundtracks bringing up. Yes, that was the Book of Boba Fett episode 3 where they had those Vespers or the mopeds or whatever the hell they called those awful things, but they're now part of Star Wars canon, amazingly. Right, who else do we have? We've got Coach Goody 421, the 421st Coach Goody, of course, on YouTube, saying ha 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 ha. Yes, that's how I pronounce that. And Rodney P saying, should we be worried about Aquaman 2 based on the recent test screenings? Or is it just BS? That's interesting, actually. We weren't going to talk about the Aquaman test screenings, but yeah, I don't know if you heard about this, Shaun. Hello, Shaun, by the way.
Hello. Yeah, you bet I did.
Yeah, I didn't really want to talk. I did and I didn't, because we do want to, talk about mainly positive things, but unfortunately, there is some news that's not going to be positive, and apparently these test screenings haven't been going all that well. So what have you heard, Shaun, and what do you make of these stories?
I think maybe they have a lousy cut, and the reason they do those test screenings, hi, Bobby, the reason they do those test screenings is to figure out why their cut is lousy. So I give credence to the rumors, but whether or not that's really going to affect the final movie or not, there's a lot of things that could happen between now and then. I don't think this is a final cut, they're test screening.
Yeah. And it's happened with multiple films in the past where you've heard, test screenings have not gone well. And actually test screenings are now becoming a very important part of the filmmaking process, where they'll put out a cut there, they'll show it to people, they'll see what is going right in the movie, see what's going wrong in the film, based on their reactions and their feedback. I was actually part of a test screening once for The Green Hornet.
I was for Marked for Death, starring Steven Seagal.
Oh,
that's a special kind of hell, watching an unfinished Steven Seagal movie.
Well, did they give you like a sheet to fill in at the end of the movie, and then you put down pros and cons, basically?
Yeah, that's what they had. One of those guys pacing back and forth in front. And who thought that he should not have a ponytail? Raise your hands.
Yeah.
Who thought he's a Russian tool? Go ahead, raise your hands.
With us, they didn't have that. They because I remember they were basically it was in a cinema in West London, and they came up that I was obviously not doing anything that day. It was I was back a journalist in London. They come up to you and they're like, "Do you want to see a movie that hasn't been released yet as a test screening?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll do it." And they're like, "Before you say yes, we have to know, are you a journalist?" And I was like, "I want to see the free movie." So I said no. Of course I was a journalist, but I didn't write about it. But it wasn't a very good movie. The Green Hornet it was the same film that they released in the end. They didn't really change much. But
it's all changed with the internet. So here's me being old again. They used to be able to hold these things in secret. They would go down to like Long Beach or something. The studios would go down to Long Beach and do screening. But now everything goes out, and they're it's changed Broadway. It's changed movies a lot. Broadway used to be previews were sacrosanct, and nobody reported on previews. And Spider-Man: Turn Off the Dark killed all that, because they did the first preview and it was all over the web. Excuse the pun. How crappy it was after that. So I think the same thing's happening to Aquaman, and there's always talk about a test screening not going well.
Yeah. There was talk about, I remember Wonder Woman, before that came out, there was talk of Wonder Woman not being that good. Then the film came out, it did pretty well. I had a problem with the final third in that movie, but apart from that, I thought the film was actually quite decent. And it's happening again with Aquaman 2. And the movie, I think what a lot of people were kind of jumping off on with that film as well was the fact that James Gunn didn't actually mention Aquaman, and the Lost Kingdom by name in his. He mentioned the Flash movie and went on about how great that is, but he didn't mention the other, DCEU film. So I think people are reading in quite a lot into that, and I wonder whether he just maybe forgot,
or he's choosing to concentrate on the thing that he thinks is going to go forward.
Yeah, and also the thing that will probably help him change the course of the DC universe is going to be that movie. And it seems to me as though Aquaman 2 is going to be a finishing off point for this version of Arthur Curry. And, these reports are probably true. We don't know. None of us were part of this test screening, but just because you hear that people didn't or thought that, I think one person said the worst DCEU movie ever. So that would be pretty bad.
That's a pretty high bar.
Some pretty bad ones in the past. I've actually been enjoying watching. There's a guy called the Cosmonaut Variety Hour, who's quite a big YouTuber, and he likes to go through movies with he really, when he reviews films, he really goes through these films, and he does a thing called the worst superhero movies ever made, like a series where he reviews those movies. And I watched his last one, one of the last ones he did, which was the Suicide Squad, and it brought back memories of how bad that movie was. I was like, God, I forgot. He's like, this film's 30 minutes in, and we're still having establishing shots of these characters. It's just unbearable. It's like it's true.
The first one or the second one?
No, the first one, Suicide Squad, not the Suicide Squad.
Okay.
Yeah, it's confusing, and that it brought back memories of how poor that movie was. But there are a whole bunch of reasons why that movie was so poor, which actually probably segues onto my next point. I'm very clever here. I think you know what my segue is going to be. I want to, since we're talking about DC,
not a segue. We're still on scooters from.
We're still on scooters.
We're not using segways. We're on.
It's a scooter. It's a moped.
I really, really, really
to-
want a Cortina.
Yeah, basically the Ayer Cut. So there's been talk recently, mainly because David Ayer has shared yet another picture of Jared Leto's Joker. There's apparently loads of uncut of footage. I wanted to know from you, and maybe James might want to chime in at some point about this as well. Do you think it's time for Warner Brothers Discovery to just release the Ayer Cut of Suicide Squad?
If it's there, why not? I mean, if you don't have to like throw any more money into it, then just, why not? Just let it out. I mean, what else is there to do? I mean, it's you're not going to spend any more money on it. Maybe there's going to be some payments, back end payments for actors and stuff, but what's it going to hurt at this point?
It's an interesting one, because actually talking about test screenings and things like that as well, bringing it back to that, is one of the reasons why the movie that we ended up getting was so all over the place was because Warner Brothers panicked, mainly after the release of Batman vs Superman, realizing that people thought these films were too dark, too brooding, too moody, and Deadpool had just done really well. So it's famous that the film that was released was not the movie that David Ayer had made. That movie actually does exist, and it was already being shown to people. People have actually seen that cut as well, and it's apparently pretty much finished. There doesn't need to be anything else done to it. And it's actually, I think it's quite an interesting example of what happens when studios panic and really interfere with things. And Warner Brothers seems to be very good at this.
I think it's a part of the corporate culture myself. I think it's the inability to leave anything alone is just I think somehow or another it's just the DNA of the company.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really understand why it's like particularly bad with Warner Brothers, because I mean, I don't know if you saw like the recent reports of how much money they are hemorrhaging. Is kind of like, since the merger with Discovery, I think it was what 2.1 billion or something. They've
billion
lost
in quarter four. That was the thing that got me. So it's like it's not even the whole year. That's just one quarter.
Yeah, which is insane. And I do wonder whether like Discovery is like thinking, what the hell did we do with this? Because Discovery went from being one of the most profitable companies in working in the entertainment industry. They were doing very well before this merger, and there's something about Warner Brothers. It seems a bit like a poisoned chalice at the moment. No one really knows what to do with it.
Well, it's the same thing that happened with AOL when AOL bought in. Time seems to have gotten away okay, but AOL bought in and their stock price dumped, and the Warner Brothers stock price dumped immediately, which is one of the reasons why I still have to work. And it just seems like it's a Warner Brothers itself is a hot potato that just gets thrown from investor to investor and nobody fixes anything.
Yeah. And at the time, I remember thinking about what could happen when the merger did happen, because before that they were of course with AT&T, which was like the weirdest kind of it wasn't a merger. AT&T owned Time Warner,
right?
And honestly, they did not know what they were getting themselves into, because AT&T is a telecommunications company. They've never made anything content related before. They've never made any movies or TV shows. They suddenly find themselves with a studio that owns some of the biggest IPs in the world, that has made some of the best movies ever made, and they just didn't seem to know what to do with it. It was really odd, really, really odd. That people were hoping that this merger with Discovery would end up kind of saving that. If anything, Discovery has spent most of its time now, David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, trying to fix all these problems, solve all these problems that was caused by a very bad previous owner. Really, one of the problems that I actually think what they did with Zack Snyder's Justice League is actually testament to that poor management, because really doing what they did with that movie made no business sense, because they ended up spending, I think it's reported that on that film alone, like if you're gonna talk about Justice League in its entirety, from like even Justice League to Zack Snyder's Justice League, they ended up spending about over 400 million on that movie. Making it the world's most expensive superhero movie ever. They then released
movie
ever.
I mean, it's got to beat Avatar, doesn't it? 400 million.
I mean, probably Avatar might have pipped it. I'm not sure, but the difference between Zack Snyder's and the Justice League in general, and then Zack Snyder's Justice League, was Zack Snyder's Justice League was not released in cinemas, could never have been released in cinemas. Let's be honest, because cinemas would not accept a 4-hour movie because it would just not make any sense. They'd be like, well, we're only going to be able to screen this movie so many times a day. We're not going to make any of our money back. They then put it on HBO Max. They gave Snyder, was it 40 million extra to finish the film? I think that ended up ballooning to even more than that. And this was all happening whilst, was it 70 million they ended up giving? Yeah. This all
for the recut, 70 million for the
just to shoot the extra scenes that he needed to do. So to pay the actors yeah. I mean, there's an element, it was utter insanity. If you're really going to look back into it and think this was a stupid decision to make. I mean, I'm personally very happy that it happened because I got to see that movie and it was a very interesting movie to watch. But you've got to. It's a business. It's still a business, and it's mind-boggling that anyone involved at a business level in that company would have thought this was a good idea. Just because
I don't know.
There was people talking about it on Twitter.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. What I would have done, if I ran the zoo, was if they're going to spend that much money on it, I would have made it a roadshow. Like old time. Gone with the Wind and Sound of Music and stuff like that, and you just book it into big theaters at higher ticket prices, and let it play limited engagements that way. And that I don't know if that's going to get your money back, but it seems like that way you can get a 4-hour long movie into a theater.
But I mean, they might be having the same issue with David Ayer Suicide Squad, is they just don't. I mean, yes, they could just release it on HBO Max. But now they're really looking at maximizing profits. So they'll probably want to see a way to make this, how can we make this movie profitable? Can we re-release it in cinemas? The idea of doing like almost like what they did with, was it Grindhouse, with those movies where they would release 2 movies and they would have like an interval. But the thing is, cinemas have moved on from that, and multiplexes I wouldn't think they would agree to doing that unless I think maybe smaller, more independent cinemas would, that they would actually get higher footfall.
Yeah, and they have companies out there, distributors that do those road shows. I mean, that's what Kevin Smith did to his last 3 films when he released those. But
yeah,
they might have a contract in place so that they can't just go to just any distributor.
Yeah, that's probably it. I know, and then there's the other thing. It was like, okay, I really wanted to see Zack Snyder's Justice League. I'm glad we got to see it. I've said this before, but I think the studio kind of regrets it with how the fan base has gone after that. So if they release the Ayer Cut, then like that'll get the fan base rabid again, and then like, oh, we won again, and then they just won't.
Yeah,
they just won't move on.
They won't stop.
And, and so I think that is probably some trepidation from the studio as well.
Well, but let's go back. Like, how many people is that fan base? I mean, is it really sensible to cater and or be afraid of that fan base? I mean, is it that large a group?
I'm starting to be more and more think about it. I think it's just one guy. It's like he's got a lot of time on his hands. No, but a lot of clearly at least 100 people out there.
A lot of them will tweet like over and over again to make the numbers bigger because of these tweet drives, and I like the passion, but they don't translate into box office receipts. I mean, Black Adam kind of proved that. So,
And the other thing that I found a bit insane about the release strategy of the movie was that in the United States they released it on HBO Max, and they released it as a way to kind of try and drive up subscriptions to the streaming platform. But the problem, I was like, why didn't they just release it as, if they're going to do it that way? I was like, just release it as a paid movie or something. You have to rent or buy it. If you're going to do that, just release it that way, because ultimately what happens, and what I always knew was going to happen, was people were going to subscribe to HBO Max, watch the movie, and then cancel their subscription. So in the end, they'll only be getting a month's worth of money, like subscription service money, which I don't know how much it costs in America to subscribe to HBO Max, but it can't be much more than what, $9, $10, maybe.
Right. I think like it's nine something a month. I'm not sure.
Maybe. But if you're going to put it sell it as a DVD, I know people don't buy DVDs anymore, but sell it digitally, you will end up making more money that way.
Yeah, they did release it on Blu-ray. It did pretty well.
Yeah, and then worldwide,
like Black Widow,
released it.
People paid, and Black Widow people paid $30 on Disney Plus to watch it.
I actually think that's a better way of doing it, even though I don't agree with it. I think the release strategy on Disney Plus made more sense, which is you actually had to pay money to see these movies early, as opposed to going to see them in the cinema. Because at least that way they get both their subscription service and they get someone paying to see that movie.
Did you get to see it for free on Sky over there, Edward?
No. Yeah, so I was going to talk about this. Internationally, you did have to buy it digitally, which makes it even more stupid. Because they were like, we're going to do that here, but we've got this streaming platform service in America, and maybe in Canada it was on Crave, wasn't it? And it just there were a lot of mistakes made during that time, and I feel like Warner Brothers is in such a mess now because of that. And actually now that, like, after all that mess, they then ended up losing, I think, one of their biggest box office pulls, which was Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan will no longer make movies with Warner Brothers. Maybe one day he'll come back, who knows? But Oppenheimer, I think, is Paramount that making that film. So it's I think that was disastrous. Just that whole period, I think, was really really bad for Warner Brothers. And now we are seeing those, we're seeing they're losing money, they're hemorrhaging money. And I think
especially when the directors and the writers found out in the trades that their films are going to be put right to digital.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think there were two things going on. Like Disney Plus was charging $30 for Black Widow, and counting on that they had enough other material that people would stay. And they took out a lot of pushback for that, I believe. And that's why they just do an early. I don't think they do that anymore, do they? I think they just do an early release. Yeah. And they were really trying to concentrate on HBO Max when they did the Justice League. When they okayed the Justice League release, that's when they were moving stuff over from the DC digital service onto HBO Max and thinking this is going to be their next big thing. But then the whole streaming market in the US, it hasn't collapsed, but it's sure leaning tower of Pisa-ing at the moment, because there's just too many things. And it's getting to the point to where you have things like Freevee and Pluto, and there's going to be that lower tier of Netflix where it's just going to be broadcast TV on demand with commercials and stuff. So this is looking, that part of the business is looking really bad to me. And with the losses that Disney Plus and HBO Max have had, it just makes me think it's even going to be even worse.
I agree. I do think that I always thought that the streaming kind of area of entertainment and pop culture was kind of always on shaky ground anyway, because you expect to have so much content on one streaming platform for actually a relatively low amount of money. Like it's still, I mean, it's getting more and more expensive now, but it's still not to the level as you were probably paying for Showtime or for HBO back in the day when it was like network television. And in the UK, it's a Sky package. It's quite big. If you want to have Sky, you're paying quite a lot a month. And it's not like, you know, we're not really being inundated. Like, there is a lot of new content, but there's a lot of stuff that it tends to get forgotten about as well now because of this way that they release things, apart from maybe on Disney Plus. But this kind of binge mentality as well has led to a lot of people just watching, you know, just watching crap, really, for lack of a better word, on these streaming services, and not really going to more interesting things. One of the things I was looking at was I wanted to see how many people had watched Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio on Netflix. Apparently, it's super low. The number is very low, and that's really, to me, such a shame, because I watched Pinocchio recently, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, after having watched the original Disney Pinocchio on Disney Plus, then went over to Netflix, and I was like, this film is incredible, and I wish it had a cinematic release, because I think more people would have seen it that way. So I actually think the streaming game has actually led to people like not actually finding stuff to watch as easy, because there's too much stuff in a weird way. And
but Tiger King did well.
Tiger King was right at the beginning of the pandemic, and you know, most people had Netflix. Now there's stuff like I enjoy a British show called Detectorists, and in its life in the States, it's gone from Netflix to Hulu to Amazon Prime to Freevee on Amazon Prime. So you know, you can't find the stuff you want to watch, and it just keeps jumping around, and it keeps getting more expensive to have all these streaming services. So it's to me, the business model is not even as good as commercial cable at this point.
No. And you know what I tried to watch this weekend? All the DC Showcase shorts. Try finding those. Can't even find them on HBO Max or Crave or whatnot. It shouldn't be that hard to find a 15-minute anime cartoon from DC.
Yeah, well,
but they might have put that away, going, we've got new stuff coming. We've got a whole new way of doing things. So
what they need to do is make more of those for these new characters they're going to introduce, because those are great.
I think they need to make more Justice League Unlimited to introduce all those characters.
That's what I think. Can I have that jacket?
No.
Well, one of the things I have actually found to be quite interesting that Warner Brothers Discovery has been doing is they've been going back to the licensing way of, you know, with their TV shows. So they're licensing some of their bigger shows. They're going, all right, if you want it Netflix, you can pay us this much money and we'll make it, but it'll be on your streaming service.
Right.
And I think that's the way they're going to go forward. We saw it recently with Dead Boy Detectives, for instance, was a show that was being made for HBO Max. It's now going to be on Netflix. So it seems as though they're looking at that as a more kind of stable business model with their future, for lack of a better word, content.
There's a whole bunch of interesting things in that Dead Boy Detectives thing, because it's a DC property that they're willing to let somebody else broadcast, and it's Berlanti, who, love him or hate him, has been, you know, really reliable with turning in popular television shows, and they're willing to let him go to Netflix as well. So that's kind of weird. I mean, it's going to be their product. They're getting paid for it. They'll own it at the end of the day, but it's not pushing either the CW or HBO Max. No.
And well, it's also something that it's a bit like the Sandman. It's kind of that. Right. It's kind of what they did with that, where although there was quite a big bidding war for that to begin with, I think, and it ended up going onto Netflix. But I almost see it as like Warner Brothers Discovery kind of realizing that they're not going to be making any money out of the streaming game. So the best way for them to move forward, they're even taking stuff off. They're taking so much stuff off HBO Max recently, and relicensing it out to other streamers, because they know that they can't make the amount of money necessary they really need to make out of HBO Max, mainly because it's only available in a couple of territories. You can't get HBO Max really outside of the United States, because they signed all these ridiculous agreements with other companies and studios all over the world to license out their products, which go on until like 2025 to 2030 in the UK's case with Sky Atlantic. So it's that means that you won't have HBO Max in the UK, a pretty big market, until at least 2030. So what's the point? If you can't have it in Europe until then, what is the point? I think there's one place in Europe that has it, and that's Holland, the Netherlands, and that's it.
So both people in the Netherlands can watch it.
yeah. That's the only time I've been able to even see the platform. Was we went to Amsterdam, me and my wife, and the girl, we stayed in we looked after a girl's cat for a week, which was very nice. Very, very nice flat in the middle of Amsterdam. Looked after a lovely cat, and she, of course, had HBO Max. And I was like, oh, of course she does. We're in Holland, in Amsterdam. It's the only place here. So I looked through it. I was like, yeah, it's cool. You can watch Friends on it. We watch Friends on Netflix here in the UK. No, not the UK, in France. So yeah, it's like, okay, fine. It was all right. Not that much stuff on it though. I thought it looked a bit barren. And
it's changed, because when it first started, there was a lot of stuff on there.
Yeah,
and you could dig back into past HBO shows, and I think they had all the comedy specials going back to Robert Klein's first one in the it's in the 70s, and then they've been cutting stuff off piece by piece. And why? What is it?
Because they're going to license them out. I bet it's that.
So it's popular enough that somebody will pay you for it, but it's not popular enough to draw people into your subscription service.
Well, apparently one of the biggest things they make money from is the licensing of Friends. Friends apparently is huge for them. So
and it's huge. It's huge worldwide. When I was teaching English as a second language, every Chinese student and every Brazilian student asked me if I liked Friends. Every single one.
Yeah.
And Friends has got in China, in mainland China, Friends has got to seem like science fiction.
Yeah. Really, it does. I don't know what I don't know about Seinfeld. I don't know who owns the rights to Seinfeld, but I know that also NBC. Is a big one. Is it NBC?
Does NBC still own it? Were they the production company as well? Yeah, they were, weren't they? They were. Yeah. So Universal.
Yeah. Well, they're the two biggest ones, apparently, according to someone I was talking to about all of this a couple of days ago. Is the licensing of Friends is huge, brings in a lot of money for Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers, actually, this is another thing I found out, they make a lot of shows for other streaming platforms. So they make a lot of Apple stuff. So recently, the new series Shrinking, which I watched recently, is really good, with Harrison Ford and Jason Segel, which is on Apple TV Plus. And the other one is Ted Lasso. So they make those two shows for Apple TV Plus. And I think that's what to me, I'm like, this is bonkers. Like, you've got these two, like, in Ted Lasso's case, it's the only reason you subscribe to Apple TV Plus, let's be honest. There's not much else there. I mean, I think there's there's kind of good content there, but
Hello Tomorrow. I'm a Hello Tomorrow fan, so
yeah. I mean, there's some. I mean, there are some things, but I just think I'm like, you agree, like you basically do all the work on this show, being Warner Brothers, and then in the end you're like, well, we can't put it on our own streaming platform, so we'll cut a deal with Apple, and because it's just HBO Max is just useless. It's such a useless streaming platform. So I was thinking about it, I'm like, it's so rubbish, and people go on about it in America.
This is making me think of when the WB, which became the CW, first started. The year the WB started is the year that Friends and ER started on NBC. And apparently they were produced by Warner Brothers Television. And apparently nobody at Warner Brothers Television offered either of those shows to the WB.
Wow.
I think this might be a company culture thing. This has been going on for years. It's just the bad management.
Warner Brothers is Imperial Japan. They're all fighting to make the Shogun happy, and they don't care who goes down.
By the beard of Zeus says, "Whoops!" So I think Warner Brothers executives have been saying that since the company began. I think how are they still around?
This has all started since Jack Warner died. If he were still alive, boy, none of this would be going on.
Yeah, I agree.
There'd be racist messages everywhere, but none of this would be going on. Actually, no. Actually, Jack Warner was one of the least racist of the original Hollywood moguls, which is again a pretty high bar.
Just saying something.
So Edward, you were talking about Netflix and superhero shows earlier. We've got some news on an old Marvel Netflix show.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a good way to tee me up. Yeah. So we
go for six, Edward. Hit it for six.
Yeah, hit it for six. Well, we were told that. So this whole John Bernthal story has been kind of going along for a while now. Will he? Won't he come back to play the Punisher? Apparently, the idea is to bring him back in Daredevil Born Again in some capacity. Now, we weren't given too much information about it because I think it's still pretty early days with that one and what's happening with him. But the idea is to introduce him in that series so that they can use him later on, further down the line. But I mean, I do wonder in my head, I do wonder whether a sticking point for John Bernthal is like how they approach the character. Because he is someone that said multiple times that his version of Frank Castle is he wants it to be very much comic book accurate.
Yeah, which like Marvel Max. But do you think so? Like no walk of shame for Frank Castle in Daredevil Born Again?
Who's he going to be sleeping with?
She-Hulk.
I mean, Daredevil had the walk of shame in She-Hulk. So
that was my joke, Shaun. Yes.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. You don't need to subtitle them for me, but I appreciate the thought.
Well, Rodney says it's going to be graphic, mature like the Netflix Punisher series. Well, we put out a video last year about the show they were working on. It was going to have some Western vibes and be very hard R, and the Punisher was going to be on the run from these people hunting him. That's how they're going to start it. But now, if they're going to introduce him into Daredevil Born Again, it'd be interesting how they're going to take that direction. But it also bodes well for Daredevil Born Again, how it might not be as lighthearted, obviously, as She-Hulk. It'll probably be dark, too. If John Bernthal's been pushing for a dark Punisher, comic accurate, Garth Ennis run Punisher. But Garth Ennis run did have a lot of comedy moments in it as well. See, the thing about that run, and I'm not going to go on tangent here, but everyone in that series except Frank Castle is stupid or laughable, right? And that's what makes that series work, because the focus of the seriousness is on Frank Castle, and I think that's how it should be in the series, or even in Daredevil Born Again. So there's a room for that leeway there, that Marvel humor. But you watch a Punisher series, you don't want a bunch of humor in it, or to be too Marvelized.
Yeah, I just my problem with the Punisher TV series was that he was just too mopey. He wasn't angry guy out for revenge. He was I'm sad. I'm so sad. Let me brush off my skull T-shirt. Maybe I'll kill somebody later, but I'm just so sad.
But I do wonder whether that was one of the things that actually appealed to someone like John Bernthal. He does. If you watch a lot of the stuff he does, he likes to go to those places emotionally, and he talks about that a lot as well. He's like, he often he likes more emotional characters, because he's like, I'm this guy that's got this rough facade, but I'm actually a lot more than that underneath. He's talked about this on multiple podcasts that he's appeared on.
But it needs to vary. I mean, it needs to go up and down. And to me, when I only watched like the first 3 or 4 episodes of Punisher, because I was just so bored by it. But it just seemed like he was just this all the time. What I can say is I watched. Yeah, I liked it, but I thought the first season was a lot stronger than the second. There were some really good moments in the first season, but I do think they took I think they got a bit too obsessed with trying to make it as violent as they possibly could do. And it kind of took away a bit from the show in the end, I think. And I think you're right, actually, Shaun. I think he was a bit too mopey in it and a bit too depressed. Second series, he starts going a bit more Frank Castle like from the comics, and just very violent, and you don't really see much of that
more emotional side of him that you did in the first season. But I do wonder whether this is actually one of the things that I heard is that Daredevil Born Again is actually going to be quite contained and isn't really going to mesh much with the rest of the MCU or the outside world, kind of, and it's going to be more contained and less obsessed with like connecting to other things. Like if you look at like what's going on with Loki, they like seem to be obsessed with that, like connecting that to the Kang dynasty and all that stuff and setting that up. I like that. I like the fact that it's kind of going to be a bit more contained and a bit more story focused, hopefully.
Yeah, I do too. I don't think this Daredevil really mends well with the rest of the Marvel universe. So I kind of like having him off to one side, and maybe you bring him in once in a while, like on She-Hulk, which humanized him. I thought, that kind of stuff works okay. But it was actually one of the episodes of She-Hulk I really liked a lot.
Yeah,
because I first of all, it was Daredevil was doing Daredevil stuff besides flirting with her when he had the costume on. He was actually doing stuff like I want to see Daredevil doing. But it would be really cool to see sort of a gritty. I mean, all the Frank Miller stuff is just there. And if you don't want to use the Frank Miller stuff, the Ann Nocenti stuff is great. Actually, Denny O'Neil had a really good run on Daredevil after Frank Miller. And because Frank Miller was so iconic, all that other stuff really gets forgotten. And it's not even reprinted, really. Some of the Nocenti stuff is reprinted. But that book had a really solid run after Frank Miller, too.
Daredevil, Mark Waid's run was pretty good, too. I enjoyed that. It was a different tone, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Who wrote the Man Without Fear? Who wrote that comic book run?
That was a subtitle series, though, right?
Yeah.
Daredevil, the Man Without Fear, wasn't that?
That's the type. That's what the book is called. Oh,
that was Frank. Yeah, that was Frank Miller with.
Was that Frank Miller?
Yeah, John Romita Jr.
Yeah. There's also one. There's also a novelization of that by Paul Crilly.
Well, actually, this is. I don't know if you saw the interview, Shaun, that we did with Thomas Jane.
Thomas Jane.
That previously played the Punisher. Do you remember the name of the comic that he wanted to do, James, as the Punisher? He talked about. I can't. If you can go and try and check out that interview that we did with Thomas Jane on the Small Screen channel. But he mentioned it was almost. I think he kind of pitched it as like Frank Castle trapped somewhere. sounds as a bit like the Dredd movie, which I was like, that sounds quite interesting.
Right? Yeah.
But he talked a lot about this particular comic book. I'm forgetting
Circle
the
of
name now.
Blood.
Circle of Blood, that's it. Yeah.
He said he would do it as a director. He would love to make Circle of Blood. Castle ends up in prison with everybody that he put there over the years, and they all want to kill him. It's a really great little graphic novel. Use that as the core and sort of expand it out a bit.
It's Rorschach in Watchmen. I'm not trapped in here. I'm not trapped in here with you. You're trapped in here with me.
Yeah. I mean, that could play quite well, I think.
Yeah, it's contained. It'd be easy.
Yeah.
It's easy to shoot superhero movie.
Yeah, and I really do think that that we've said this multiple times on this show, but Marvel really needs to start thinking differently. I think, especially given the recent box office drop in Ant-Man 3. I am really working on these scooters, on these mopeds.
They're not mopeds, they're scooters. They're Cortinas and Lambrettas.
Someone in the comments said moped. It was like, okay, fine. But yeah, so Ant-Man's had, I think it's a 72% drop off.
Really?
In box office revenue for the second weekend. So it did really well the first weekend. Second weekend, it's a huge drop. This is in the United States. I'm not sure. Well, I don't think the worldwide numbers are available yet. But I'm not surprised because I don't think this is a movie that people are going to want to see twice.
Yep.
And I get the impression that a lot of people have seen Ant-Man Quantumania and they're like, okay, I'm fine with that. I don't need to go and see that again.
And if they do want to see it twice, it's going to be on Disney Plus in a couple of months anyway, so why
Exactly.
do that? I think I'm really not a fan of this short release window idea. I think that's part of what's killing their box office.
This is the stupid thing. I have actually had arguments with people on, because I did a video on TikTok about kind of explaining the French release strategy, which is the French government is very protective of its cinema industry, because cinema is a French invention. They like to go on and hark on about the Lumiere brothers having created cinema, and they really want cinemas to stay alive, which I think personally is a great thing, because I love going to the cinema. And
the last Jerry Lewis cinema is actually in Alsace-Lorraine. Not many people know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Making it up.
Yeah. Oh, you're making it up. Okay.
In Alsace-Lorraine, they get the German and the French audiences.
Do you guys know where Alsace is? I don't even know. Is Lorraine even in Alsace?
I'm out, Shaun.
Have you made that up?
No, they're close. They're close.
They're close. Yeah. But yeah, so I was explaining, and the French, basically, if you want to release a movie in cinemas, I think you can't have the movie be released on streaming for like up to 8 months, or like it's a year and a half, I think, in some cases. So it's like there's a very big like gap in between the movie coming out in cinemas and being able, either DVD or streaming. And they did this in order to protect their cinemas, because they want, it's in French culture anyway. Loads of people go to the cinema here. And I think that's actually, I think that it's a bit too much. I think the amount of time that they talk about, because really a movie needs, a couple of months at the cinema to be able to make its money back. But if people know that movie is going to be on streaming within the next couple of weeks, what's the incentive to go and see the movie at the cinema? Now, then people will often say, well, cinemas need to do more in order to entice people to come. It needs to be a better experience. Again, as far as I'm concerned, like my experience going to the cinemas in France, in Paris, and even in the UK is always quite good. I don't know what it's like in the US. I've heard horror stories of cinemas in the US. Yeah, apparently it's
in
not
North
very good.
America, it's pretty crap.
Yeah, well, this is a problem, and I actually think it is also a cultural thing. I think maybe there was a more. I don't want to say Europeans are prouder of their cinemas and make it a better experience, but I have very rarely had a bad experience at the cinema, and it's always very comfortable. It's always really, the projection is always really good. You've got really good sound systems, and most of them now, they're all being updated as well. And it's even if you go to like a small community in somewhere in France or the UK, cinemas are generally still quite good, and people still go to them.
No, the theaters are nice in North America. It's just the people.
Yeah,
that's the people.
Yeah.
You can't really change that. Then
I agree with James 1,000%. I mean, people don't value watching the experience of watching a movie or even a TV series.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not an experience anymore. It's not. They don't appreciate it, to be honest with you.
We're not trained that way here. We're trained to it's just a movie, or it's just a TV show, or it's just a play, and it's invading live theater too. I had a friend talk about going to see some Broadway musical, and they had to come out at the beginning of the show to tell the people in the first row not to put their feet up on the stage.
Yeah, I think it must be a cultural thing then, because first off, like in France, people get very funny about people being on their phones, which I'm one of those people. I will tell someone to put your phone away in the cinema. You see it happen a lot. People are quite respectful in general. I have had some instances where I've been to the one I remember is going to see Transformers. The Dark of the Moon, I think, is the actual title. Not Dark of the Moon. I think it's The Dark of the Moon. Awful movie, terrible film. Don't know why I went to see it. But the people in the cinema were awful, like throwing popcorn at the screen. I'd never seen this before in my life. And I was kind of in my head, I was like, I don't really want to go up to them, because there are quite a few and they're quite kind of young men. And I'm just one guy. So, I will probably lose that fight. And I didn't really want to have a fight about a Transformers movie. but I was like, in my head, I was getting very annoyed because I was like, you have to respect the cinema. You can't be doing this in the cinema. Right. And that did piss me off. And in the UK, I had a bad experience watching the first It movie, where I was next to these two women that were Snapchatting the whole way through the first 30 minutes of the movie. And I turned to them and I said, have you really spent 15 quid each to sit here and be on Snapchat? And they were like, what do you mean? And I was like, you've spent money to be here and you're just on your bloody phone Snapchatting. So I said, if you're going to continue doing that, I would recommend you just leave. And they left. And then I had a great time after that.
See, it hasn't always been like this in North America.
Yeah.
Like in the late 80s and the 90s, it was still kind of good. It got to the end of the 90s, we started to go downhill in the theatrical experience.
It started in the 80s. I mean, I'm old enough. As I keep saying, I'm old enough. But I remember when your parents would make you put on a coat and tie to go to the movie theater. But my dad would make me wear a tie to go to a football game. So because that's, I mean,
wow.
No, seriously, my parents
go on an airplane, right?
Yeah, my parents were almost 50 when I was born. So they were from a long time ago. But I was the guy who would get in fights in the theater if people didn't quiet down.
Me too.
Yeah. I don't
kicking the chair behind me.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that anymore. It's
not our job to babysit.
Yeah, it's just a horrible experience going to a movie theater. You're just trapped with a bunch of people that you wouldn't normally want to be with.
Mm-hmm.
If I pay extra for like the big screen IMAX 3D smell-o-vision, personal headphones and a guy bringing me nachos when I press a bell, the audiences tend to be better. That's why I'm saying road shows. I remember road shows. I remember being a little kid and being taken to see Sound of Music on a road show, and you had to have tickets like you had to go to the theater, and you had ushers in uniforms that took you down to your seat. Barbara Goldman and her mother took us.
Well, I mean, we still have ushers here in France. It's still a big
really
thing.
In a uniform and stuff.
Yeah. They're in like black. They're all in black. Not really a uniform, but they're there, and they go around with the torches. They show people to their seats. My brother was an usher in our local cinema where we were. That's the job he did for a while. But I really do think it must be a cultural thing, and I do wonder whether it's the same all over the United States, or whether there are certain parts of the United States where it might be. I don't know. I can't imagine going to like Broadway in New York and having this sort of problem.
Oh, I just told you that friends in theater at Broadway had to come out and tell people to not put their feet up on the stage. That was on Broadway. That was a Broadway show. Yes, they had to come out and tell people not to put their feet on the stage. You have what's her name from Evita? Patti LuPone will stop the show and lecture people for taking pictures or having their phones out during the show. I mean, in Broadway, tickets are in hundreds of dollars.
Yeah,
so they're paying. They're paying what's 15 quid? Is that like $30, $25, $30? They're paying They're paying hundreds of dollars for a Broadway show, and they're doing it.
I imagine that the Alamo Draft House is probably a good experience.
Maybe, yeah. I hear good things about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you said Barbara Goldman, you were talking about the producer?
No, I was talking about the girl who lived around the corner that my mother wanted me to marry.
Oh.
I mean, I've been.
We were four. I'm thinking, Edward. I'm like trying to figure out, how I can get an EU passport now. And move to France.
I mean, honestly, I'm quite shocked. This is the thing as well. When I talk to people that are in the United States or in North America, like you guys, it is a bit mind-boggling to me that it's so bad there, because like I've been to see a lot of West End shows, have never had any sorts of problems like that. Like people are always very respectful, and maybe there's more of a love of the craft as well. Whereas it's like people in America see it more as like box office blockbuster, I'm already here giving you my time. I can do whatever I want. Like, kind of treat it as though it's your own living room type thing. Whereas I do think there's like, if you go out to see a play or a show or a movie in Europe, it's very much like we have paid for the experience. And maybe there's just, I mean, there will always be dickheads. There will always be twats that will do something. But I get the feeling that the majority of people will want to like deal with that. Like in England, the English are very kind of like, we will we will give you a stern look and that's enough. And in France, people won't stop to tell you what they think of you. They will tell you what.
In Toronto, there's some really good theaters that still people respect the cinema. There's like the Carlton Cinema. There's the Bathurst Theater. You can go there, and there's a whole bunch of theaters in Toronto that you can watch, and everyone's quiet and respectful. But in the majority of North America, it seems to be lost.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you're in Toronto around Halloween, go see the Rocky Horror Picture Show at Bathurst Theater. Man, that's such a great experience. Bring some dry toast to throw at the screen. When they all toast, you'll have a good time.
I still have friends who are professionals in the theater in like New York, and one of them just posted this weekend that he was doing a show, and he does a clown bit at the beginning of the show telling people to turn their phones off. And he said the first 3 rows were people either texting, talking on their phone, or trying to record the performance for that. And he said it's always, for him, it's always the people in the best seats who have paid a lot of money for those seats, and it boggles his mind.
You know what I saw once? So my wife and I went to Vienna, and we went to the Royal Opera House in Vienna. Now, I'm not a big fan of ballet. I hate ballet. And we got the tickets through a PR because my wife's a journalist. We went there, and the first person I saw in the seat in front of me was a Chinese gentleman that had turned up in flip-flops and shorts to the Royal Opera House in Vienna. And that was a moment that is always going to be entrenched in my mind as a bit like, okay, like this is a bit of a, I think this is quite problematic.
Well, it's like you used to go to the late shows in the US and dress in a suit and tie and nice clothes, but now they go in flip-flops and shorts and tank tops and stuff.
Yeah.
I was telling somebody the other day that they didn't believe me that when I was in college and right after, you could not get into a bar wearing a t-shirt. If you had you had to have a collared shirt on to get into a bar. And they just didn't believe me. And I thought about it like, yeah, it seems completely crazy now.
Well, thanks for watching the Old Man Podcast, everyone.
God damn it, my wheelchair's double parked.
Well, I was going to say,
what else can we say that's bad about times changing?
When I was going clubbing, when I used to go clubbing, in Paris, you at the time, I don't know what it is like now. I haven't been clubbing in many years, but you would not be able to go into a club if you were wearing trainers or sneakers. They would automatically say no. Also, jeans. They wouldn't let you wear jeans. So you had to go everywhere wearing, relatively nice clothes. Well, it's already like you're going to a club in Paris. If you're a man, you're not guaranteed entry because, of course, they're saying,
yeah,
too many men. No, you can't come in. You got to find a woman to come in with. So it was a lot of, me and my mates going around Paris trying to be like, hey, trying to find girls being like, do you want to come to the club with us? If you're 3, we're 3, we can get in.
That's what I'm at the club for. Why do I have to bring them with me?
Yeah, man, it's that was. I'm glad those days are over. It wasn't really something that I had much time for. I was a grumpy old man when I was like 12, so it was kind of weird for me. But it's
James,
a shame.
Put the 1 minute 30 second up now.
Thunderbolts. Here we go. Yeah. James,
so
Steven Yeun.
Ryan Gosling's been cast, right?
Oh, you saw my tweet. Those tweets get so much traction, and those accounts are so sneaky. So to give a little bit of background to this story, there's a very famous Twitter account called Discussing Film. They're also a website, I think, they post news
Famous?
from. Well, they're pretty well known, aren't they? They're
There you
famous.
go.
Yeah, I suppose famous is not the right word, but they post a lot of mainly like movie and TV news. But they are well respected. They are always source the right people. I think they've also broken a few stories of their own. But there'll be other Twitter accounts out there that will do everything they can do within their power to make it seem as though they are discussing film. I wasn't getting banned for misinformation. I'm trying to inform people, but yeah. So basically, you'll look at the Twitter handle and you realize that it's not discussing film; it's discussing fime or something with 2 I's and 3 S's, or they'll do it that way. And then these tweets end up getting thousands of retweets and thousands of likes. And one of the tweets was, of course, Ryan Gosling has been cast in Thunderbolts in a lead role. If you've seen that and you believe it, well, it's not true. Ryan Gosling hasn't been cast in that movie, but Steven Yeun has. That is true. And Steven Yeun has been cast in a lead major role, apparently. And it's not going to be Invincible, I don't think. I don't think he's turning up as Invincible in that film. If you know, he voices.
So we don't know who he's playing yet?
Not yet. That hasn't been confirmed. No. Here we go. So you got it up, yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to provide a service, as you can see by that tweet, James. And it's discussing fime. Not discussing
I didn't see
film.
anything. That was all Kaz. I was just highlighting the comment.
Yes, I'm trying to help people. It's only got 1 like, my thing, so I haven't done very well. And that was only you, Shaun.
It's probably me.
It was.
I only go on Twitter every Tuesday morning, like, I better like everything James and Edward have done over the past week, so they think I'm paying attention.
I do the same.
But the funny thing, I mean, I tried to add the real discussing film in there, and they obviously don't care about this because it happens so much.
No, they just want, and that's happening with a lot of the comic book news sites too. Is they just post bullshit to as clickbait, and it's kind of like what's going on with politics in the States and in Canada to a certain degree. I mean, there's nobody minding the store anymore. It's just whatever anybody wants to put out, they can put out now.
Well, as you know, guys, it's not fake news. It's alternative facts, isn't it? So there we go. Wow. I can't work out whether they're massive or you're just quite small.
They're fairly large.
They are big boys.
5'10" at my weigh in at the doctor yesterday.
Yeah, so you're over average height then.
Yeah, I said my weight's down, my blood pressure's down, my cholesterol's down, but you're still crazy.
Brilliant. Yeah, so we don't know who he's playing in the movie. Thunderbolts is an interesting one. I'm not quite sure what to expect from that film, but it's got a very interesting cast, I have to say. It's really some really good actors in there. You've got David Harbour's going to be in there, Florence Pugh's in there, Steven Yeun. You've got Harrison Ford, he's going to be President Ross in the movie.
Right.
So General Ross has been elected president.
And Harbour's Red Guardian, right?
Yes, yeah, back as Red Guardian.
Wyatt
I just find it
as John Walker.
Yes,
that's right.
Wyatt Russell. But I'm assuming yes.
So
yes,
Julia Louis-Dreyfus is back as the Contessa in that.
yes.
Sebastian Stan, Bucky Barnes listed on the IMDb.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, it's a good cast. I just find it hilarious that they were like, we know that it's going to be President Ross in this movie. Who can we cast as the president? And the first name that comes to mind is, of course, Harrison Ford.
Get off my plane.
Well, because
Exactly.
William Hurt's dead. I mean, it's Thunderbolt Ross,
Yeah.
isn't it? Isn't he taking over the part from William Hurt? He was Secretary of State in Winter Soldier and Civil War.
Was he? I didn't even know he was Secretary of State. The last time I think he was that the last time he was seen was in
No, he was seen in
Black Widow.
Where's the Civil War is the Accords, right? And that he presents that to the Avengers and says, "This is what you got to do." It. I think that's
he showed
the
up
last
as
time.
a hologram though later on.
Oh, did he?
Check right now, yeah. The last one was Endgame. Yep. No, Black Widow. He showed up in Black Widow.
It was Black Widow, but in Black Widow, I think that was like kind of flashback, wasn't it? That he was in.
Yeah, they did some de-aging on him.
Yeah.
Like Kurt. How do you say this name, Shaun? You can correct me. Kurt Busiek. Kurt Busiek. He's listed as a writer, but I think that's just because it's based on the comics of his run.
Yeah, he wrote the books. Yeah. I'm kind of interested in it. I don't really know that run, but they're putting together such a wacky cast. I just hope it's not going to be all let David Harbour riff for half an hour and we'll just put that on screen and people will love it because he's funny. Because I like that. I was interested in that character, Red Guardian. I was interested in going a little deeper into him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if you guys
saw who else it's written by. Sorry, Edward.
No.
It's written by Eric Pearson. He started off as a script doctor on Ant-Man, and then a script doctor on Spider-Man: Homecoming, Pacific Rim, Uprising, Avengers: Infinity War, Avengers: Endgame, Pokemon Detective Pikachu. It's someone that comes in and does rewrites and polishes on the scripts.
Usually uncredited.
Yeah, he wasn't credited on any of those, but it's on his IMDb. And then he was credited as a writer on the Marvel one shot, The Consultant, and the one shot, A Funny Thing Happened the Way on Thor's Hammer, and Item 47, and then Agent Carter one shot. And then he was an executive story editor on Agent Carter. Then he wrote Thor Ragnarok. And he got a screenplay credit for Godzilla vs. Kong and screenplay by Black Widow.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Sort of a roller coaster ride of quality there.
Yeah, Thor Ragnarok was good, and I really liked Agent Carter, most of it, the series, but
King Kong versus Godzilla, though.
Yeah, I haven't seen it still. And Black Widow was a bit kind of iffy.
Black Widow wasn't very good.
No.
I'm gonna say like even you can complain about the movies that have come out like more recently, like even Ant-Man 3, and some people seem to not like Black Panther 2. But I actually think Black Widow was the worst Marvel movie to have come out in the last couple of years.
It was just so disjointed and pointless after what we'd already seen. Why are we going back and doing this now other than to introduce new characters that you want us to follow?
Yeah.
And I think she deserved a lot better considering her service to that franchise. And it was service. It was, she's going to do the parts that they need to make the story work, but never really get her own sort of moment in the sun. Yeah.
It was for me, it was a massive disappointment, that film. And I don't know if you guys saw David Harbour. Yeah, that scene is awful. That CGI scene.
You know what that scene reminded me of? When Hawkeye looked over the bridge.
I knew you were talking about Hawkeye.
Yeah. That was like, wow, it's the same kind of thing.
It's such a waste of that movie. Was such a waste of like an incredible cast as well. I felt like Florence Pugh's amazing, Scarlett Johansson's brilliant, David Harbour's wonderful, like great, Rachel Weisz is amazing.
Ray Winstone did like
Ray Winston.
That was amazing.
Ray Winstone.
Like that shined. Ray Winston. That made the movie.
Cannot do accents. Why the hell do you go? Great. I need someone to do an accent in my movie that's not East London. I'm gonna get fucking Ray Winston.
We doing this again?
But if you've got Ray Winston, my money is just let him talk however the fuck he wants to talk. He's going to turn in. I'm still a fan of the Sweeney. So
it's Ray Winston.
No, I forgot about that. Yeah,
big fan. We're the Sweeney, and you're nicked. What? I want my Sweeney sequel.
That's never going to happen.
I know, but I'm heartbroken.
But that one of the funny things about that movie, I saw David Harbour talking about it afterwards, and I think he was on one of those American late night chat shows, and they were talking about the accents in that film, and that he was asked, like, I just don't understand how you can have like a perfect North American accent, and the rest of the movie you're talking like this, and he's like, yes, it makes no sense, and he was like agreeing with him. He's like, I should be talking Russian. Have an accent the whole movie. It makes absolutely no sense. I was like, at least he's honest.
Or they should have brought it back at some point, that he needed to put on the accent again to fool somebody, and that then it would have all been forgiven. Because it would make sense he would have a decent American accent because he was undercover in the States, but then to just abandon it for the rest of the movie is madness.
The only time the accent change like that has ever worked was with was it Die Hard? Was oh my god,
Alan Rickman,
Alan Rickman, where he's he does the oh my god, no, sorry, I'm on the roof, and I was like, that's the only time, because it was a small amount, and it's like, okay, maybe a German speaker could pull that off for a little bit, but not
Daniel Brühl was pretty good with switching accents in Civil War, though.
What did he do in Civil War? How did
he was?
Oh, he has a bit of a moment, doesn't he? Yeah. Again, terrific actor, so he can pull it off. I'm sorry, but Ray Winston just isn't
an international treasure, Edward.
He's Ray Winston is a type. He's not a chameleon.
He's a sexy beast.
He's a type.
He's a sexy beast.
And I don't know why, but I like movies with big, broad, thuggish guys in them.
He's your type.
Yeah.
Ray Winston is your type. That's fair enough. He's very good in The Departed, and he's very good in Sexy Beast. In The Departed, he's doing a
treasure.
He's doing a better, accent in that. You can kind of, it's all right. It's possible. There's a movie that he did called, is it Fool's Gold? That he did, where his accent goes all over the place. It's like, if you watch, there's an old show that I used to watch called it's the Adam and Joe show, and they did it was Adam Buxton and Joe Cornish, who was the original scriptwriter on Ant-Man, and they do a whole thing about. Yeah, he did Attack the Block as well. They did a whole thing about Ray Winstone's accent in that one movie. It is hilarious. The boinging back to East London, because he's meant to be like from the deep south, and he's going like, "Yeah, I'll doing this," and then all man, it goes right back to East London for one scene, and no one knows why.
He probably does it on purpose because everyone gets his name wrong. It's actually Winstone.
It's
Frank Quietly and Henry Cavill.
No, it's Ray Winston. It's not Ray Winstone.
It used to be a thing on talk shows, I remember, or chat shows, seeing people talk about that some American actors could do a passable British accent, but British actors just found it almost impossible to do an American accent. And at some point in the 80s, that changed. Like, I think somebody did a concerted effort to try and figure out how to make this work. And there's dialect
Peter
coaches.
Sellers is great.
Yeah, Peter Sellers is, but he's a freak of nature to begin with.
And Hugh Laurie talked about that for a while too.
Yeah, he had that he couldn't go back to his own accent on the set because otherwise he'd never find the American accent again.
With him though, with Hugh Laurie, all he really did was just go very deep, wasn't it? He had a very and that's kind of what they all do now. I think like now you've got like the Brits, all the Brits in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like Benedict Cumberbatch, just does the same kind of thing with his American accent. It's like nondescript America. It's like, where do you come from? I don't know.
I'm not from anywhere. I'm from nowhere.
Yeah, the one that really impressed me though was, I never thought he could do it, was Martin Freeman in the Fargo series. But I was like, oh, actually that's good, because I always thought Martin Freeman was very one note. Was always that guy from The Office.
And to bring us back to Steven Yeun, I was going to ask about this. Are they going to actually utilize him as an actor, or are they just going to go the Martin Freeman route, where it's like he'll just show up and do a few scenes and then he's kind of wasted?
That would suck.
That would suck. But I think they say he's a lead character in the movie. So,
but didn't they say that about Martin Freeman in the Black Panther?
Black Panther?
Yeah.
Literally, they could cut out all of Martin Freeman's scenes in those movies, and it wouldn't change anything. His character's so useless. It's like, why do you even have this guy in the CIA that's just doesn't make any sense?
I'm worried they're gonna do that with Steven Yeun and Thunderbolts.
Yeah, they have a
There's a
lot of
loaded
characters
cast
like
already.
that.
It's
Yeah, in the
like what they're
MCU.
doing with what's his name? Who's playing Jimmy Lee in WandaVision and in the Marvel universe and in the Ant-Man movies.
Oh, yeah. I'll look it up, Shaun.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, it's a great character, and they show him he has some depth, and then they just
Randall
pass
Park.
him off. Randall Park, yeah.
They brought him back for like 1 second in Ant-Man 3. He's literally in it for a second, and he doesn't say anything. Imagine that. It's like I have to go and do this 1 second scene.
Well,
He's a great actor. He's a great.
He probably
He's
was
really
doing
good.
more than that, and it
just
got
cut
on the
it.
cutting room floor.
Yeah, that's a shame. He's really good. I love him in WandaVision, and he's good in the I think he's Ant-Man 2. He's in a couple of scenes in there, isn't he? With all the magic stuff. That was they do that a lot with these a lot of these characters. Like they constantly bring back Community actors to just be in random scenes. Like Abed from Community was in, I think, one of the Avengers movies, or
He's
maybe
on
it was
the
Civil War.
The first Avenger.
he's on the helicarrier. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
I think it's Civil War he's in. Yeah.
No, the first
And-
event was. Oh wait, yeah, it was Civil
No.
War.
It's
It
Civil
was-
War or Winter Soldier. He's
It's
on the
one of-
helicarrier
it's-
someplace.
It's one of those, and it's like I know that it's it's the Russo brothers, so obviously they want to bring back their mates in it. But I think he's a bit wasted. I think he's actually quite a good actor.
I think it was great
yeah,
to see him though.
Yeah,
It was like a
I
nice
suppose it's
little
it's one of
wink.
those moments that
Like-
they still haven't got what's his face, the lead in Community, the lawyer. Who's the actor?
Oh, Joel McHale?
Joel McHale. I
Joel.
don't know who he'd play. Yeah, Joel McHale. I like
That's
him. I
okay
think
with
he'd
me
be-
though. No, I don't know. I find him.
I like him in Community.
know,
I think he's a good.
Yeah, but every character he seems to play that I watch, he's just annoying, like grating on the nerves. Like, did you see him in the new X Files?
Did you-
The new X Files
No.
episodes?
Did you see his new
No.
sitcom Animal Control?
Not yet. No.
No,
It's like it was. I swear to you, it was written by AI. Like,
it probably was.
give us a sitcom, and we'll plug in. It takes place at an office of an animal control thing, and there's a British person and Joel McHale. All right, we'll be back in 15 minutes.
Wow.
Well, actually, talking of Randall Park, he was in a sitcom recently, wasn't he? A Blockbuster, I think. it was called.
Blockbuster.
Yeah.
That was. I watched that whole first season, and I was like, "Oh, it's all right. It's not great, but it's fine."
I think
But
it
it
was
got
too
cancelled
early.
pretty quickly.
It was like too soon to put that out. I think.
Do you reckon?
Well, they were trying to piggyback on that last Blockbuster documentary.
Yeah, but it's like when the '70s show was out, and then they made the '80s show, and no one watched it. It was way too
Well,
soon.
that
But now
90s
the '90s show came
what?
out.
It's terrible. That show. That
They
show
actually-
is like. I think that was written by AI. Definitely. I
The
can't
90s
see it any
show
other way.
Did really well. There were some good moments in it. I watched it with Spooky. She really liked it. Me, I'm just like, what's up with all these jokes about the kids having sex with the adults? Like every episode, like there was like 5 jokes about that, and I turned to Spooky. I'm like, what is going on? Are they reinforcing the Hollywood pedophilia stuff? And she's like, no, even the '70s show was there. Like, not this much. That's all they focused on. I was like, wow.
I didn't. I watched the.
I want to
think
do
I
a
watched
video
the first
essay
2
on that.
episodes. Go ahead. I watched the first 2 episodes of that, and I was like, "This is not for me." I found it too cringe to watch, and I was like the fake laugh track just takes me out of it immediately. Also, because I'm not finding it funny, and then that just makes it even worse. and I
Right.
don't like the kids. I
Right.
don't like the kids in that show. I was like, they're not interesting. So I was like, nah, I'm out. I'm tapping out of this after 2 episodes. McKellar's, he's in Stargirl. I forgot about that.
Just
Shoot,
I think the characters he plays are just like dickish, and like,
because
I
that's
like
what
him
he
as
is.
an
I
actor.
suppose.
Yeah, but no thanks. I'd rather not see
Yeah.
that. So no Joel McHale in the MCU unless he doesn't play a dickish character.
Yeah,
So.
but maybe Donald Glover at some point coming back as Prowler. Is it Prowler?
That'd be
he's meant
great.
to play. Yeah, that'd be
He's
cool.
super talented, so who knows what happens. I want, if he made like another series like Atlanta, I'd watch that in a heartbeat. I don't know if you ever seen that, Shaun, but I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I'm distracted for the moment by Joel McHale and his Starman costume.
It's not very
Wow,
good.
there were some bad choices made there. Yes, I have
there were
seen
some bad choices made with that show. that whole show was not great.
I have seen Atlanta, and I think yeah, exactly. I think the junior high episode in Atlanta is one of the finest pieces of television ever.
Did you get to the end yet? Have you watched the end?
No.
You haven't watched the last season?
No.
Oh, yeah. When you do, let me know.
Okay.
It's great television.
Yeah. I think that's that covers everything that we wanted to talk about today.
Yep. You're gonna be watching The Mandalorian?
Well, now? No.
Yes.
Oh. No, I meant
in general.
I don't know. I don't know if I want to watch them like on a weekly basis because again, it's only 30 minutes. It's kind of I feel that I don't know. I just feel it's a bit pointless. I like to watch I think they're better to be watched in one go. I know I was talking about the binge culture before, but I don't know. I always feel a bit empty.
I'm gonna watch it week to week because I've watched the other ones week to week, so I kind of have to keep that up. But that's why I haven't watched The Last of Us because I'm just gonna try and watch it back to back or like 2 episodes and then get back to it the next day or something.
Will there be mopeds, segways, or any other kind of small 2-wheeled vehicle in this season? That's what I want to know.
Because it's The Mandalorian, not Book of Boba Fett.
Oh, so there's no chance of a crossover? There's no chance that The Mandalorian might meet
Tamora Morrison might show up probably. If we can get some Boba Fett redemption in it, that would be great. I would like that.
What was that whole nitwit thing you were talking about, James?
Oh, let me bring it up here. If I can actually, I don't know if I can find it. So I was editing a video about The Mandalorian, and I did the Adobe subtitles. And when he said Tamora, Adobe put that translated as dimwit.
Oh, dimwit!
It was hilarious. And let me see if I can find it. Because actually, I don't know. I have to look somewhere. Oh, because my cousin always said dimwit, and it was freaking hilarious. And then just the way that here it is. Let me bring it over here. The way that his on that frame where it says dimwit, and then his expression is absolutely hilarious. So yeah, there it is. So that's what Adobe Premiere thinks of Tamora.
I love the font too.
Dimwit.
It's like it's like one of those Disney knockoff comedies from the 70s. It's like the Boatniks but set in space. It's dimwit.
It's like the opening to like an 80s television show.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I'll be there for you.
I don't know. I don't think I'm going to ever get enough of that one.
Oh dear. It works.
I have to do that now.
Yeah, you're gonna have to do that. You're gonna have to cut so many scenes from that show. Just that them all on the mopeds as well would work really well. It would.
Ming-Na Wen looking at the camera after her name pops up.
I think we need titles like that for this show.
Oh dear. It's the Bantha fonts. Yes, it is.
Close. Burbank condensed. It's called the Fortnite font. Kids love it. Okay, thanks for
Right.
watching, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Is that it? Or are we gonna do a real outro?
I thought that was perfectly fine the way it was.
I